Thank you very much, Fred. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very sorry I don't speak Dutch. I will try to speak very clearly. I know it's tiring to listen to another language, so what is a healthy diet? There is a lot of confusion about how we should eat, and much of that confusion is deliberate to get people back to radiant health and beautiful, healthy babies, which is really the basis of happiness everywhere. It's it's quite an ambitious goal, but you know who's on our side? Mother Nature's on our side. So what is a healthy diet? Is it the Atkins-type diet based largely on meat? Or is it a vegetarian-vegan diet about which a lot of claims are made? Or is it one of these dietary schemes which is based on a food pyramid? Lots of carbohydrates in the base of the pyramid: bread, pasta, crackers, rice, and so forth. And this came in 1984. It gave Americans and it gave the world the green light that you can go ahead and eat all the carbohydrates that you want. Carbohydrate-based diet. And since that time, obesity rates in America have doubled. This diet does not work. It is causing obesity, and of course we're seeing always the increase in chronic disease. And what's going on right now is the people who are not wise, who are still eating industrial food, who still believe all the lies about animal fat, they're seeing more and more disease in their families and more infertility. Whereas the people who've switched to this diet are seeing healthy children, good fertility, they're having healthy families. And this is what I call the natural selection of the wise. Sometimes I call it the sterilization of the gullible.
Waarom hangen wij Weston Price aan? Ik zal het u meteen vertellen. Weston Price was een tandarts in Canada, in Amerika, een Canadees, maar hij was in Amerika uit een tandartspraktijk geloof ik, in Ohio. En hij heeft 14 natuurvolkeren bezocht over de hele wereld. Wat die 14 volkeren overeenkomstig hadden, was dat ze allemaal gezond werden, gezond bleven, zo moet ik het zeggen. En daar werd onderzocht, wat maakte die mensen? Wat hield ze zo gezond? Ze werden oud, die mensen. Ze bleven actief. Hun generaties waren gezond. Er zijn vreselijk weinig wetenschappers, toen, maar ook nu, die onafhankelijk zijn. En Price was absoluut 100% onafhankelijk. Dus hij werkte een half jaar, dan verdiende hij weer geld en dan ging hij weer op reis. En zo heeft hij 14 natuurvolkeren in de wereld bezocht, van de Eskimo's tot Maasai, tot Zwitserse bergvolken, werkelijk de hele wereld over.
Raw cheese, raw cream, and raw butter. It was a very high-fat diet, and the athletes during their athletic contests drank bowls of pure cream. So there's no carb loading here. They really appreciated and valued the fats, the butter and the cream. But he did find these few villages in the Laurentian Valley in Switzerland. This was a time when the Swiss people were building roads to connect all the villages, but these few villages did not have a road yet. The only access to the village was a footpath, a little path, too narrow even for a cart with wheels. So people going and coming from the village were walking in and out of the village. So he could be assured that all of the foods that they were eating, they grew and processed in the village, with one exception, that was salt. They did carry salt into the village. Well, what Dr. Price did when he came to a tribe or village, he took an interpreter and he sat down with the elders and explained his research. And when he had their permission, he then lined up everyone in the village, opened all their mouths, and carefully counted cavities and noted any dental deformities, whether or not the teeth were crooked. He then took more general notes about the health of the population, if he saw any evidence of disease. He then described the foods that they were eating, and lastly, he took samples of these foods home to his laboratory in the United States, and he tested the foods, he studied the foods for vitamin and mineral content. Here in the Swiss village, there was less than 1% tooth decay among not only the children, but also the adults. And in the villages in Switzerland where they had a road, they also had stores that sold processed foods. He called these the displacing foods of modern commerce. They were pushing out, they were displacing the traditional foods that they ate, and they were devitalized processed foods. So foods based on sugar, white flour, canned foods, condensed milk, and most seriously, something completely new to the human diet, and that is processed industrial oils, what we call seed oils. So all the vegetable oils and the shortenings and all of these fake fats that human beings had never eaten before. So in these villages, he found, when he looked in people's mouths, 33% tooth decay. 1 tooth in 3 was decayed. And more serious in his mind was the fact that the children who were born after the parents had changed to these modern industrial foods, they were born with more narrow faces and crowded and crooked teeth. He called these dental deformities. Here he found a very high degree of physical perfection, virtually no tooth decay, no tuberculosis at all, and a very optimistic, spiritually inclined people. He was struck by how spiritual these people were. How could they possibly be healthy without broccoli? So what were they eating? Well, this was a diet based on seafood of every type, and not just the skinless meat or flesh of the fish, but the skin, the organs, the heads, the livers, the liver oil, the shellfish. So it wasn't just the fish the way we think of it today, but it was all parts of these foods from the sea. But one thing he noticed in these cultures that he never heard a baby cry. They didn't cry. They were extremely well nourished. A well-nourished baby does not cry. And we've seen this with the babies who were born following our dietary suggestions. These babies are cheerful. They rarely cry. Had terrible dental decay, causing a lot of suffering, a lot of pain. And you have to realize that all of these displacing foods of modern commerce arrived long before the dentists got there. And we need to be very grateful to dentists, because otherwise we too would be suffering from the pain of dental decay. But it was the next generation that gave him the most concern. The children who were born after the parents changed their diet had dental deformities. Their faces were more narrow, their dental palates were not large enough to contain all the teeth, and so we had crowded and crooked teeth, overbites, underbites. Again, what Dr. Price calls dental deformities. And these Indians were living in the swamps in the Everglades, and you can see what beautiful faces they have. They look noble, beautiful teeth, very well formed. And let's compare our beautiful Indian princess here with someone from her same tribe. This is the same genetics, who was born after the parents changed their diet. So you can see the difference in the facial structure. We've gone from a wide face, wide jaw, to a narrow face and a narrow jaw. This happens in one generation in the change of diet. Has straight teeth, crooked teeth, you just take them to the orthodontist and spend a lot of money, and the orthodontist straightens the teeth. But the problem is that when the teeth are crooked, and they're a sign that there's a lot of other things wrong in the mouth that you can't fix by straightening the teeth. So when the teeth are straight, it's a sign that the entire head is well developed. There will be plenty of room in the head for the important glands in the head, the pituitary, the pineal, and the hypothalamus. This is normal facial development. You can see that the face is broad. There is plenty of strength in the facial bones, and it's broad in this area so that there's plenty of room in the dental palate for the teeth to be straight. This is what I would call a modern face. This is the kind of face that most of us have. We don't have this breadth in the middle part of the face. Instead, the face is elongated and almost seems to be hanging from the skull. And this is an adaptation that the body makes when the nutrition during that period of formation and growth is not optimal. But a typical American child has dental deformities, and these are blamed on genetics. The parents are told, well, it's just your genes. But this is not due to genetics. This is a problem of malnutrition. Some diets are low in animal foods. Some diets have grains and some don't. Some diets have dairy foods and some don't. Some diets have lots of raw food. Eskimo diet with a lot of raw food. Some diets have mostly cooked foods. So how do we make sense of this? How do we answer the question, what is a healthy diet? And that's what we'll be doing in the rest of my presentation here, is giving you principles. We've come up with rules, principles of healthy diets. And once you understand the principles, you can then apply them to a diet that works for you, that has, for one thing, that has the foods available. There's no sense telling people to eat a certain food if they can't get that food. That you can afford, that you have time to prepare, and most importantly, that your children will actually eat. It was fairly short in Dr. Price's day. We had foods based on refined sugar, white flour, vegetable oils, coming in even to these Swiss villages in the 1930s. Canned foods and condensed milk. The list is much longer today. Not only do we have refined sugar, but we have something called high fructose corn syrup, which is worse than sugar. The kind of fructose in this high fructose corn syrup is not the same isomer as fructose in fruit, and the body cannot use it. And it either goes to raising the triglycerides in your blood or just making you fat. And this high fructose corn syrup is especially damaging to growing children. Scientists today do not believe that we need to obey Mother Nature. They think that they are going to outsmart Mother Nature. They can improve on Mother Nature. And so they create all of these processed foods, and they think if they just add some artificial vitamins and minerals, that these foods are going to be fine and that they'll feed the world with these foods. And I can tell you, they actually believe this. But Dr. Price's attitude was very different. His attitude was that we need to respect Mother Nature's rules, and only when we respect and follow Mother Nature's rules will we have a full and happy life. Culture had animal foods in the diet. He had hoped to find a culture that was healthy, that only ate plant foods. And he had to admit that they all ate animal foods and usually went to great trouble and risk to obtain those animal foods. All that terrible cholesterol actually is a nutrient for growing children. Children cannot make all the cholesterol they need for growth and the development of their brain, their nervous system, and also what we call the second brain. What's the second brain? The gut, the intestinal tract. These parts of the body are extremely high in cholesterol, and the infant cannot make enough cholesterol. It needs cholesterol in the diet. Mother's milk is very high in cholesterol and contains a special enzyme so that the baby absorbs 100% of the cholesterol. And the first foods for baby should not be applesauce or squash or vegetables, but cholesterol-rich foods. Early signs are neurological, fatigue, tingling in the hands and feet, sleep disorders, and a tendency to irrational anger. People who get angry for no reason, the first thing you look for is B12 deficiency. Then the more serious psychological disorders. 85% of the people in our mental institutions are severely B12 deficient. They give them a lot of drugs and things, but number one, they should be getting B12 injections first and foremost. And then the B12 deficiency is associated with chronic disease, multiple sclerosis, anemia, cancer, and heart disease. And the problem with B12 deficiency is if it goes too long, it is irreversible. You can't reverse these conditions by giving B12 after it goes too long.